let's talk more about these Pentagon leaks, right? They found who leaked them, and the sick behavior of these people is quite something, because when I say they found the guy who leaked these documents, I'm not talking about law enforcement. It's actually Bellingcat, also known as Bell and Pussy, which is, they're basically a front for Western intelligence. They pretend to be journalists and open source researchers. They really just do the dirty work for the Western intelligence, and they lied about Syria, disgusting stuff. The New York Times, so in partnership with Bell and Pussy, they tracked down the guy who leaked these documents and handed him over to the FBI, in essence. I mean, have you ever seen something like this? I've never heard of are you sure you're journalists? I've never heard of a journalist tracking down a source and then handing them over to the police. Maybe you should work for the police in that case, right? You basically do, and you've kind of they've confirmed all our suspicions about, there weren't suspicions at this point, but we've been saying, and I've been saying, how all these media outlets, Western media outlets, they really don't do any objective journalism. They just repeat talking points and things that Western intelligence want them to hear. And it's not me saying that only. You can look at former CIA officers who have admitted that they would do this professionally, like they would purposely feed Western journalists lies from the New York Times, right? They're so proud of what they've done. They're so proud. It's really something. Here's the footage of the guy being arrested. His name is Jack Teixeira. So, at first glance, you might be thinking that the army arrested him, right? That was certainly my impression for a second. But the police in the United States is so militarized. It's actually the FBI. I don't see Agent Scully anywhere. Can somebody spot Agent Scully? This guy who was arrested, he's 21 years old. His name's Jack Teixeira, and he was actually an airman, right? So he was in the U.S. military, right? In the U.S. Armed Forces. And that's how he got his hands on these documents. He's being charged with 2 counts. The Espionage Act. You guys know that I'm one of the only journalists who's covered the Julian Assange case within and without the courtroom. And I've been doing this for 2-3 years now. And Julian Assange has been charged with the Espionage Act. So I'm quite familiar with it. It's quite a nasty piece of legislation that has nothing to do with prosecuting actual spies or people who commit real acts of espionage. It's really more of a political tool, and that's since its foundation in 1917, right? Since its inception. So it's always been a political tool. Now, in this case, they're saying that, because he's being charged in federal court for now, not military. Now that could change, but since he's being charged in federal court, they're saying that it could still, have gone differently because he's not working for another country, and this guy did not leak these documents because he wanted to, do so in the capacity, as a whistleblower, right? So it sounds outrageous, but he was just trying to impress his online friends, which is, I told you last time that these documents came out on Discord, right? Discord is basically, for those of you who don't know, it's a program, it's an app that is basically it's targeted at people who play computer games. It makes it easier to communicate with others when you're playing and when you're not playing, right? And that's where he leaked them, on Discord, which is quite weird, right? And someone that was in this tiny group of his tiny group of friends, took the documents and then put them elsewhere. I think it was on 4chan, which is, don't go there, it's a really messed up site. And then from there onto Twitter, and then of course, the mainstream media picked it up and so on. But here you can see at the very top of the New York Times article, they're saying that Eric Toller is a freelance reporter for the Times. So not the New York Times, the Times, and a researcher with Bellingcat, or Pussy as I like to call them, right? So the British intelligence front. They're saying here how the Jack Teixeira, who leaked these documents, he jumped online with his friends and he said, guys, it's been good, I love you all, and basically he kind of just disappeared. He was basically telling them goodbye because he had realized, oh crap, someone leaked the documents, they're being picked up by the press, and he starts deleting all his social media and trying to effectively disappear and so on. This online group of his, well, I actually had a name, Thug Shaker Central. I'm not sure what meme they're referencing, but okay. So that's the name of his group. Apparently, according to the New York Times, so there was young men and teenage boys in this group who would gather amid the isolation of the pandemic to bond over their love of guns, to share memes, sometimes racist ones, and play war-themed video games. They talk about how he was held in high regard. This is the guy, Jack Teixeira, how he was held in high regard by, his friends and group members and so on. One of the people who was talking about, who's from this group and talking to the press, he was saying that he's not a whistleblower or something like that. It was really just, essentially, he was transcribing these secret documents for his friends, transcribing them. I mean, this guy must have really loved his friends to sit there and transcribe, secret documents. Christ. Anyway, and then, after a while, he actually just started taking them home and photographing them, not even scanning them, which is why they're so horrible to read. This is really, really horrendous because, I mean, last video, I told you what was actually in the documents. Nothing has essentially changed here. The U.S. was spying on Israel and Zelensky and South Korea and so on, right? What is disturbing here is how, like I said, the New York Times and Bellingcat, they tracked this guy down. They tracked him down, and within an hour and a half, the FBI had arrested him. So this is not the FBI who tracked him down. It's not the military. It's not a government agency. And again, you could argue that, at some point, they eventually would have tracked him down because, you have a lot of skilled detectives and so on. Maybe, yeah. It's really horrendous. Here's someone who is writes at The Atlantic, and her name is Amy Zegart, and she says, I've been thinking about Teixeira's fast arrest in the hashtag intelligence leak case. So she's talking about Teixeira, the same guy, and how it showcases the changing nature and rising power of open source intelligence. 10 years ago, open source investigations into the Boston Marathon bombing were shoddy and scary. The wisdom of the crowd became the danger of the mob. Well-intentioned amateurs on Reddit fingered innocent people. It took more careful work by law enforcement to get the truth. So she's talking about how people online, by mistake, identified somebody else as being the bomber, right? But she's saying now the situation has changed since 10 years ago. She says, this week was a different story. As government investigation gears ground away, the heroes of the hunt were amateur investigators and journalists using unclassified information and clever sleuthing. Bell-end Pussy investigator Eric Toller tracked the migration of classified documents across Discord servers and other internet platforms and posted his findings online. Shane Harris at the Washington Post got one of the members in this Thug Shaker Central group to speak on the record. Incredible interview full of information with key details about the alleged leaker. Toller then teamed up, so she's talking about the guy from Bell and Pussy, teamed up with New York Times. He used telltale clues from photos of the documents to tighten the dragnet and identify Teixeira as a suspect. The FBI then moved into action and arrested Teixeira at his home. So-called journalists and researchers are doing law enforcement's work. Wow. I mean, talk about, talk about authoritarianism, right? They just, we love them whistleblowers and, filling up jails with them. And, this guy is not a whistleblower, of course, but I say that out of disgust, seeing not just the Assange trial covering that, but seeing this climate where, basically the they feel that the media's job is to report whatever the government tells them to report, and then anybody who says something otherwise, anyone who says something to the contrary or has a different opinion is they're Russian propaganda, they should be banned. So these people who pretend to be champions of democracy, their first instinct is to ban others they don't like, and ban people who are doing actual journalism, and silence them and censor them. They just love authoritarianism, right? And this is one iteration of this love that they have, this passion that they have for authoritarianism, right? It's that journalists' jobs, a journalist's job is not to report the truth or to question authority, but to obey it and help maintain authority and help the state. Like I said, it was not found by the police. The New York Times handed him over to the FBI. I mean, wow. The New York Times military correspondent, and look what he tweeted. He said that the New York Times worked feverishly to find the identity of the guy leaking top secret documents on Discord. Ironically, if the same guy had leaked to the New York Times, so if he had leaked those documents to the New York Times, we'd be working feverishly to conceal it. So he's making an excellent point. If this Jack Teixeira had given the documents to the New York Times instead of his group of friends, the New York Times would protect him as a source, right? Supposedly. The funny thing is that Glenn Greenwald here said that I had a strong feeling that the New York Times military reporter would end up deleting his tweet, or being told to delete it, right? Given what a revealing admission he made. This David Phillips says, I just deleted a tweet that lacked nuance. There's much more nuance coming soon. You're funny. It didn't lack nuance. Actually, there was too much nuance in there for your colleagues at the New York Times, I suppose. Here in the New York Times, they say how, as reporters from the New York Times gathered near the house on Thursday afternoon, about a half dozen FBI agents pushed into the home of Airman Teixeira's mother in North, well, I'm not sure how to pronounce this place, but it's in Massachusetts, right? So, I mean, Jesus, why would you admit this? This is the New York Times. I'm talking about their own reporters, saying that our reporters were gathered outside, and we were waiting for the knights on their cavalry, the FBI, to come and arrest this dastardly villain who was posting top secret documents online. Jesus Christ, I mean, really, it's so repugnant. It's so nasty. These people are so authoritarian and insane. I mean, just let me give you an example. If we were talking about somebody in Russia, in the Russian military, taking secret Russian documents and posting them online, do you think the New York Times would try to conceal this person's identity if they knew it, or do you think they would be rushing to expose them? You know damn well the New York Times would hail this Russian leaker as a hero, right? They would call him a hero and say that he's basically an agent of democracy within the Kremlin, and he's shining a light on Putin's failed military and all sorts of bullshit. You know that they would do this. I mean, what are you doing here? Why are you doing law enforcement's work? Why don't you just go work for them? Why do you pretend to be journalists? This is crazy shit, man. This is really, really insane. And I'm not even saying whether I agree with what the guy did. This is irrelevant. You are not a goddamn FBI agent. It's not your job to track down, somebody posting these documents. Why don't you actually talk about the documents? It's funny because they only talk about the ones they like, right? Now, if you thought that was bad, well, okay, to be fair, this does not top what I just told you, but it's within the same, it's within the same vein. Take a look at this. This is Sky News, okay? Just take a look at how he opens the segment and how he speaks about this. Please get ready for the cringe, okay?
Has reviewed more than 50 of the documents. One of them, marked top secret and not for sharing with foreign nationals, shows Russian gains on the front line in Bakhmut on the 1st of March in great detail, with troop groupings and the number of casualties. We've blurred parts of this document. Or take this, dated a bit later, the 23rd of...
You did what? You blurred parts of the document? Why are you blurring parts of the document? It's already been posted online. Are you working for the U.S. military? Do you work at GCHQ or why are you blurring the doc? You're a fucking journalist. It's your job to show the document. Why would you blur parts of it? It's not graphic. It's not graphic information. It's not even secret anymore. I mean, just think of this stuff is readily available online for anyone on the planet to download, and they still go to the length of blurring out the quote unquote sensitive parts because they are such bootlickers. They are so in love with the state and serving the state and serving this authoritarianism at any cost. This is embarrassing, and they do it with multiple documents. Dude, I can just show you the real document uncensored because it's already been posted. And I mean, this is scandalous. This is absolutely scandalous. Look at this. It's pathetic.
Casualties. We've blurred parts of this document. Or take this data.
Oh my God. Oh.
A bit later, the 23rd of March, it refers to the presence of a small number of Western special forces operating inside Ukraine, without specifying their activities or location. We've also blurred parts of the document which are confidential.
They're not confidential. They are online. Are you high or something? I literally talked about this document, the last live stream I did a few days ago. We blurred parts of this document because it's confidential. What are you, their fucking lawyer? What do you work for the U.S. military? This is scandalous. This is scandalous. I like how they're every single slide they show, they make sure to tell you we blurred parts of this document like good little doggies. They want their colleagues at MI5 not to be, not to arouse any suspicion with their colleagues at MI5 that they've strayed. The United States is not formally at war with Ukraine and not formally at war with Russia, and Ukraine is not a NATO member. When you send special forces in there, that's not military aid. I mean, it is a form of assistance. But when I say, you send special forces in, and you have, you remember there was a French journalist who went to Ukraine, and he came back and said that there was an American running the quote unquote volunteer program. So you have U.S. military personnel in Ukraine. Those are not M16s, right? Or artillery shells. They're actual soldiers, U.S. soldiers running around Ukraine. Where is the congressional oversight? None, because Congress doesn't give a shit. They don't. Of course, they don't care. But again, just notice how they all also about democracy checks and balances, and actually it's all one big authoritarian machine. Let me show you something here. This is an interview that I think it was who's this again? Judge Napoli. He did with a CIA officer about these leaks. Now, this CIA officer, former CIA officer, if there is such a thing, is called Larry Johnson, and he thinks that the leaks, these Pentagon leaks, were controlled, that they were organized. Now, you make up your own mind, but let's listen to him.
Joins us now. Larry, in the past 12 hours, the Washington Post has come out with a story that seems too fantastic to believe, that the leaker of the secured, top secret, no foreign documents prepared by and for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and his team is in fact a 21-year-old Air National Guardsman from Fort Bragg or Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and that this was originally shared amongst a group of teenage gamers, of all things. Is this even remotely credible?
No. It's a lie. It's fabrication. The Washington Post, this first surfaced with a cat, Bellingcat. Bellingcat is a front for the British intelligence. That's where the story first surfaced. Washington Post then picks it up, and the Guardian then picks it up on the same day. So this is a coordinated media strategy. This is a disinformation campaign. The documents are real. I'm not saying that the documents are fabrications. They are not. But this cover story that's been manufactured to explain how these documents came to be produced, it just falls apart. It most simply falls apart based upon one document in that mix, which is listed as CIA Operations Center Report, top secret. I worked in the CIA Operations Center. I helped prepare those reports. That's an internal CIA document. No one on a U.S. military base anywhere in the world will have access to that kind of document, for starters.
Sorry, but he's right. You know, if you go and read the Vault 7 leaks, you gain insight about how the CIA was basically bugging the computers. I don't remember where this was, the NSA? It was one of the other alphabet three-letter agencies. Because they felt that those agencies were not sharing everything that they had, all their information, with the CIA. And so the CIA wanted to make sure they got everything. And so they would go and bug their own fucking colleagues in American, law enforcement. I mean, it's amazing, right? So when he says that there's no way you're going to see a CIA document on a U.S. military base, I believe him. You know, a general or a member of Biden's cabinet would have something like that with them, or someone at the at the director of national intelligence, but not some 21-year-old in Massachusetts who's not even an NCO. He's not even a non-commissioned officer, like a sergeant or something. I don't even know what rank he is. He's something. I read the affidavit. It's ridiculous. There's no way he's got CIA documents. I just don't believe that, you know? And like him, I'm not saying necessarily documents are fake, but why would he have something like that? It's something's fishy, man. I don't know. Anyway, I'll let him continue.
Who or what is spreading the misinformation? Is this CIA feeding garbage to their friends in the American and British media?
I'd put it above the CIA. This is elements connected to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, because that's the one place where you bring together CIA, FBI, NSA, DIA, all the key elements. They are the one place in the U.S. government where you can assemble all this material. And the way this thing was so neatly packaged up, until I saw that CIA document, I was inclined to believe that this was simply the act of a whistleblower wanting to flag the problems about the public discrepancy between what Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, and Mark Milley, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the lies they were telling in public, as opposed to the actual reality of what they were being briefed on in secret and top secret briefings every day.
How embarrassed is the Biden White House, the Pentagon, and Langley, CIA, over these leaks?
Some are embarrassed and horrified by it, but what I think the strategy that's underway is this information was leaked with a variety of purposes to prepare the U.S. public for the crash landing that's going to take place with respect to U.S. foreign policy, the crash landing in Ukraine, the crash landing in China. In fact, we're already seeing elements of just the, if you call it the...
Are you saying this was a controlled leak?
Yes.
Done by management, not done by some Edward Snowden, Bradley
Right.
Manning type?
Yeah, there's some elements within management who thought this was a good idea. I mean, this shows how both unprofessional and ridiculous it is. I mean, and dangerous. And the information that was leaked about Israel, part of that comes from a FISA. It's got a FISA classification on it, which that doesn't necessarily mean this is Department of Justice FBI territory. So again, there's no way that some National Guardsman who's doing TDY at Fort Bragg would have access to that. And I'm not basing that upon what happened to me 40 years ago. For 23 years, up until about 3 years ago, I worked in these SCIFs. And I still have friends that do, who are retired CIA and retired NSA and retired FBI. And I talk to them, and they're still seeing the material. None of them have seen anything like this, particularly that CIA Operations Center document or the FISA document.
Right.
They have complete access to the high side, the top secret side. They have special access programs, SAP clearances. So that's why I say this thing is This thing is too tidy a package. This has been wrapped up nice and neatly. This is like an episode of Law and Order.
I can't help but agree with him in regards to, the FISA. He mentioned one of them had FISA written on it. You guys remember FISA, Bush era. So Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The thing is, that's Department of Justice jurisdiction, right? You have to remember something when it comes to people who work in all these agencies. They have all these huge egos, right? They each one of them wants to think, that they're the most important in the hierarchy, and when they go stepping on each other's toes, that's a recipe for a disaster, right? So he joined the military, I think, 2 years ago. Look, man, there's no way you're getting that kind of access in 2 years. You know when you watch like all those spy movies, everybody in the film has like gray hair. Yeah, because they spent their whole goddamn lives in as career officers or whatever it is to get to that level where you actually have access to this kind of information. Sorry, man. No offense, but you're just your rank is not that high enough. As a gamer, you should know all about that. Not seriously, but I went through his let's talk about the affidavit for a second, right? So I went through this. It's interestingly enough, the New York Times posted it on their website as well. I later found, but they won't post the documents, right? Once again, they want to be good little doggies for the deep state, right? They'll talk about the documents and ones that are aligned with their interests, but they're not going to actually show them to you. Even though they're available on the internet, you can find them on the internet. Sky News will blur them out like good little doggies. And the New York Times won't actually give you the documents to look at for for yourself and to make up your own mind like an adult. I mean, this is the worst leak in history, man. WikiLeaks would never do this to us. Do you think WikiLeaks would treat us like this? Do you think WikiLeaks would do that? First of all, WikiLeaks would have redacted anything that's really, really dangerous to somebody. And I don't think there was anything of that sort here. But WikiLeaks would have just dumped everything neatly in one goddamn place for me and you and everybody to just read without any editorial opinion or molding on their part. Just here, read it and see for yourself. That's it. There's respect. They don't try to poison your mind. They don't try to influence you. They don't try to brainwash you. They don't try to spew a narrative or do any kind of mind control. They just give you the documents. That's why Julian Assange is rotting in a prison cell, right? They are not journalists. They wish they did, as much journalism as Julian Assange's pinky, right? They wish. And make no mistake, Jack Teixeira, I have no clue who this guy is. I don't care. But from what I can tell, if he is the leaker, there's certainly no indication he's a whistleblower. So there's, I don't know if this whole narrative that, he wanted to impress his friends is true, but I can tell you from the affidavit, they're charging him with 2 counts of the Espionage Act. Now, remember, each count is 10 years. So if he were to be convicted, he's looking at 20 years in prison. But remember, Chelsea Manning got 35 and she leaked 700,000 documents to WikiLeaks. I think the number is actually 700,000. I correct me if I'm wrong. She leaked. The point is, she leaked infinitely more documents and infinitely more sensitive documents that were in the public. The general interest, and were in the public interest, and had to be seen by the general public. My point is that she did a lot more, and she was a whistleblower, and she got hit with 35 years. So this guy, no way he's getting 20. Again, maybe I'm wrong, and it turns out they actually give him 20, but I really doubt it, because he's not a whistleblower and he's not a spy. I can't say whether the documents are, inauthentic, because the only thing that was annoying to me, which I told you last time, is how people were photoshopping the number of losses, making it, some people would make it to look like Russia was incurring, more losses, or it was the other side were saying it was Ukraine. Look, man, I really, that annoyed me a lot, but it's not important. And the rest of the stuff seems to be genuine. I don't know about, the only thing that stuck out to me as being a bit weird was the Egypt one, because everyone was saying it's false, both Russia, the US, and Egypt, that, Egypt was supposedly arming the Russians. So you make of that what you will. But the CIA document and the FISA document, those stick out like a sore thumb. The Operations Center one and the FISA one, those stick out like a sore thumb. This guy is right to call this out for being a tad bit fishy, right? We'll see, man. We'll see. I mean, you guys, please tell me in the comments, what you think of all this. I've presented you with all the information that one can possibly gather about this story. Last time in the other video, we investigated what is actually in the documents. And now I told you everything, surrounding this story. So the background information about these FBI agents pretending to be journalists at the New York Times and Development Pussy, outing this guy, and also the charges that, he's been hit with. So 2 counts Espionage Act, and the mainstream media making sure that you don't actually read or see any of these documents, because that would upset their paymasters and their, well, I don't like to say paymasters, because I don't think it's a question of money. These people are just genuinely dumb and brainwashed. And doing really evil crap, running an evil empire. So